So why isn't Alpha just telling him that's our mate and like putting all his four paws down on it? You know what I mean?
I literally can't right
What's up, everybody? Welcome back for a brand new episode of the Loan Limit Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your host, Chelsie. This is Ashlee.
Hi.
What's up? What's good? You know, we're halfway through the spooky season, and I feel like I don't think my friend's okay. So, what's going on?
I'm okay. It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay, no joke. I'll kid you not. I was in my living room reading this weekend, or I think it was actually during the week. I don't remember what the days are anymore. But I distinctly had a moment where I was like, I'm enjoying going outside of my genre, outside of my comfort zone. Like, I'm appreciating the experience. But oh my god, I cannot wait to run back. I text you and I was just like, I need a palate cleanser because I just need a break between, and I totally ran straight to Jasmine Guillory. And it was lovely. I fell in love all over again, and then I was like, okay, I'm ready.
I just feel like I need to tell people at home, we have gotten to a place in our spooky season reading where I literally read the book ahead of Jay and then send her chapters and be like, hey, yo, fair warning. And then, like, even on today's book, I literally was like, she was like, oh, sorry, it took me a little bit longer because that last chapter was a doozy. And I was like, chapter 33 was on the list.
Yes,
she was
like,
I know
it was on the list. It took me, like, I couldn't just, like, just because you warned me about it doesn't mean I can just read it. Like, I had to be like, okay, all right. Like, I still have to, like, process and prepare. And then, like, while I was reading it, it was getting a little, like, too, like, So I had to, like... skip ahead to know what might happen, and then be like, okay, this seems safe, read. And then, like, put it to the top, and then, like, skip ahead. Okay, this is safe, read.
Jay! Okay, I, like, no shade to anyone who falls in Jay's category of scary readers, all right? No shade to y'all at all. It's just funny to me that, like, the books we're reading for the podcast are in no way scary. Like, in my book, right? Okay. Don't make that face, all right? In my book. Like, I was over here at Barnes & Noble yesterday looking at Stephen King novels, like, do I want to try one of these? Like, what am I thinking? And Jay's over here like, yo, that witch in chapter 33 had me stressed.
Yes.
And I'm like...
It wasn't scary.
No shade.
It wasn't scary. I wasn't scared. I just had to prepare myself to process the incoming information. Okay. That was all.
Wow.
Like, I have not had nightmares at all reading this book, which is great because I have read a lot of it, like, at night. See, like, look at that. I was brave.
That's growth.
Yeah.
That's growth.
But it just, like, took a lot of processing. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give your brain a little break for a minute, and we're gonna think about some light and fluffy moments, if you will, before we get into today, because I feel like I need to give you like 2 seconds to catch your breath.
Like an emotional reprieve. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I've been reading a lot of books from childhood that I just wasn't at the reading level quite to understand what was happening and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then I realized a lot of books from our childhood, those of us who are 90s babies, you know, shout out to the 90s kids. But a lot of our books got turned into movies. And I'm really curious.
That's so sad. Because yes, but I feel like all the ones I was in love with didn't even come close to being adapted.
No, not even close. Because whatever you were reading over there was so different.
Very different. I was like the obscure kid in the library. Yeah. Yeah.
But I am curious, what are some books that were made into movie or TV show adaptations that are actually good in your book? And this is coming with high praise because you are a TV and film person. So what we got? What's on your list of good adaptations that, while they might not be page for page what the book is, they were still good?
Well, first I have to give the disclaimer that when I like reviewed the list of possibilities, I
Jay hadn't read any of them.
I either had not read the book or had not watched the movie. Like, it was so definitive. It was like, yeah, I read that, never watched that. Yeah, I watched that, I never read that.
Oh my gosh.
And it was to the point where you were trying to help me out, where you were like, okay, there's some you have for sure done. And I was like, no.
Y'all, it's not that hard to Google and be like, oh, that was my childhood. That was my childhood. For Jay, it's a little different.
Yeah, I had a weird childhood. I feel like this is where I have to be like, just blame it on homeschool. I was a homeschool kid, so I think that's just, I'm gonna just chalk it up to that. And also,
Whereas
I don't love
I
classics.
did not know parental controls. I did not know parental controls. So
I will say this, I don't think I really
safe to
had
watch.
book parental controls though. Like, other than like no magic. My mom wasn't a big magic fan.
Jay, that's a parental control.
Yeah, but I had the freedom to really read whatever. It was more so like I guarded myself.
All right. So what did make the list?
It's kind of weird because I feel like these may not even be the best, but it's kind of like the only ones I have exposure to that I can speak to. So Holes, which I feel like it had like a recent anniversary.
Absolutely the best.
I feel like it had a recent anniversary.
It's like 15 or 20, about 20 years since the movie.
That math is scary, but yeah. So Holes definitely made the list. And then I think it was Chronicles of Narnia.
That's a lit one. Listen.
Yeah.
When the lion said, don't cite the deep magic to me, I was there when it was written. I said, go off. Go off, kitty cat.
I honestly, here's the thing with me. Like, I really just remember the goat kind of dude who is James, and if you're an X-Men fan, then you know he plays Professor X, like the younger version in the new adoptions.
Yes. James McAvoy.
Yes.
Mr. Tumnus is the character.
Yes. And I remember...
Can you tell I'm a fan?
And I remember, like, the middle son in the book. Purely because he was in a TV show called The Royals, which he played phenomenal.
That's the older one.
Was he the older
one?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's... Yeah.
That's what I remember, which is not a ton for memories. So, yeah. I
think it's time for you to go back into that world.
Oops.
But, just a little fact check of myself here. Holes just had its 21st anniversary of the movie.
Wow.
And as someone who has loved the guy who played Zero, shout out to Cleo Thomas.
Yes! I had the biggest crush on him.
Listen, in high school, I had all his mixtapes on repeat.
Yeah, he's a talented dude.
Shia LaBeouf is in that movie. That movie actually has a lot of heavy hitters, like in the adults section.
Casting-wise, it hit hard. And I think, like, the audio has, like, been running around socials for a while. It's the, like, I'm tired of this, Grandpa. Yeah. So it's, like,
that's too
legit.
bad.
Yeah. I feel good about this pick.
No. I can tell you as someone who...
like, stake and claim like it was all me.
Yeah. I literally just read the book for the first time, like, maybe a month ago.
Wow. Maybe. How was it reading it as an adult?
That's a lie. I read it in elementary school. I remember my teacher reading it to us, but yeah. As an adult, the nostalgia that comes with it, because it's almost a scene for scene type of book and movie. Like, there's a couple of things that Disney added.
They did a fantastic adaptation. Like, you know me, and I'm like a production, like, heat seeker. Fantastic adaptation. Listen,
when Bud, I'm sorry, he's always going to be Bud to me, but when Sam says, I can fix that, when he died, I literally just said, I can't fix that.
Yeah, that one hurt. It's so funny because, like, I haven't read it as an adult, and now it makes me want to pick it back up. I did read it a couple times as a kid,
You have to.
And...
I
guess I didn't even realize it, but he was definitely laying some, like, serious book boyfriend vibes early on. I was way too young to catch that.
Yo.
Okay, I guess you caught it.
Adult? No, like, reading it as adult, I was like, that's the man you strive for. The one who's just like, I'm there if you need me.
I'm there, yeah.
Anything you need, I got you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but also, like, once again, Dule Hill and Patricia Arquette as the actors in the movie, phenomenal job.
Yeah.
It's a great adaptation. As an
Yeah.
adult and someone who's also in TV and film, I have no notes.
Hey,
None.
no notes is a high praise, because usually
no notes.
we got notes.
Well, there's one note. I'm actually really sad because in the book, the scene where Zero has to spell dig, it isn't in the book. It's only in the movie. And so I got to it in the book and I was like, where's my scene? Where's my scene?
Yeah.
I was like, D-I-G spells dig.
No, that's so funny. Yeah, no, that makes me want to go pick up that book, like, today.
Yeah. It's sitting right here on my shelf. I can see it.
Aw, and it's on your top vibe shelf. That's good.
Yeah. No, like, literally immediately I was like, nostalgia, it wins. I have no commentary whatsoever. 5 stars.
No, it's funny because it's like, I definitely know and recognize the book, but I don't think I own it. I definitely don't own it. So I think I need to go hunt it down.
No. I bought like an OG copy from like a thrift bookstore is what I call it, where it's like a secondhand bookstore. So it's like, yeah. I remember like my teacher had it, like the library copy on like hardback reading it to us. Like it's a childhood memory for me for sure.
Aw. Okay, so you have mine. What are yours?
Mine are going to be slightly different than yours.
Of course they are.
I would say The Color Purple. Hands down.
Interesting. Okay.
Great. So, in high school, I had to do a lit and film. Well, I didn't have to do a lit and film class. I was like, if you're going to make me do English, I'm going to do something that I want to do. So, we had to read the books, watch the movies, and kind of analyze them. And I think for how dense of a book The Color Purple is, and I would pull it out and show y'all, but it's a little bit further down out of my reach right now, so I can't. But just know I got my high school copies still. But for how dense that book is, I think Steven Spielberg did a great job of exploring all the character dynamics, everything that happens, and, like, really telling a full story. So, like, I can't complain about what we got. Now, I haven't seen the musical version. I haven't seen the musical movie version, all right? So all I'm talking about is the book and the Steven Spielberg.
Okay, I'm totally gonna expose myself right now, and I'm kind of already regretting it.
You've seen neither one.
The Color Purple is the one with like Oprah in it, right?
Yes.
Okay. I for sure seen
Goldberg.
it. I for sure seen it.
Okay.
I have not read it, and I haven't seen any because I think they made a new one too. Like I feel like Taraji was in it.
All right, so that's what I was saying is like, so after The Color Purple popped off as a movie, they didn't put it on Broadway. And then like last Christmas, they came out with a new movie, but it's the movie adaptation of the Broadway show. So it's slightly different than... Yeah.
Got it. Okay, yeah. I for sure have seen the movie, but I definitely saw it older. Like I'm thinking like college or after. And it was like, I watched it because I was like in the industry and I was like, I can't not have seen the classic. But, like, it's not for me. I think they did a good job. Now, here's the thing. I haven't read the book, so I can't speak to the adaptation of it. Yeah. But I thought it was a good movie. It's just, like, not the kind of movie I enjoy, so.
Yeah, that's fair. It's definitely for a certain type of person. And, like, this is how bad it is. My love for this. When they put it as, like, a re-release in theaters, like the OG Steven Spielberg one, I made my cousin who had never seen it go and watch it, and I was like, so what do you think?
That's a beautiful experience though. Like when you didn't see it originally and you see the re-release as it for the first time, that's probably an amazing experience.
Oh, it's fantastic. I've done it with tons of movies. Every summer, y'all, check your movie theaters because they're always showing the classics. Like, I've seen Jaws, I've seen Color Purple, I've seen all kinds of movies in theaters that I wasn't able to because some of them came out before I was even born. But it's such a fantastic experience to have that surround sound. The lighting's perfect. Because, you know, sometimes in dark scenes when you're trying to watch at home, you're like, is that a hand? Is that a foot? I don't know.
Is that my reflection? I will say this, though, totally is like a production nerd note, too, is that a lot of those movies were shot on film. And so when you see them in the way that they were meant to be consumed.
Yes.
So, yes, I definitely support that experience. That was such like a production nerd moment.
But it was so true. My second pick, I feel like it makes the list purely because I just read it and just watched it. As I've mentioned many a times now, I'm rereading books from childhood. So I went through the Hunger Games series, and they just released, Suzanne just released a prequel called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is all about President Snow's, like, rise to power, essentially.
Actually know a good amount of what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I just read it, and it's one of those things where it starts off a little slow, but the minute you have that thought of like, this is kind of going slow, takes off. Like, I literally was like, when I tell you this book took over my life, I mean, like, I literally for 2 days straight after I finished it just was like, I need someone to talk to. Anyone who's read this book, I need to talk to you about it because I don't know what to do.
I also love that you knew that you couldn't come to me.
No. This is definitely... Well, I mean, like, I think I could have in a roundabout way, but I definitely would have had to break down certain things. You definitely could have done, like, a book dump, and I would have been there with you, but I just wouldn't have known. I would have known anything that had ever been referenced in the first movie, because I watched The Hunger Games, the movie. Yes. I haven't seen... I don't think I've seen any of the sequels, and I didn't read any of the books. Just... Right.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think you should read them. I think you'd enjoy them. They're really good, edge of your seat. But I just watched the movie for Ballad of Songbird and Snake literally last night because I was still in the throes of trying to release it, all the energy I had. Yeah. And I was like, I gotta watch it. I think they did such a good job because that book is thick, all right? There's a lot of things happening. And the way... they were able to cut out moments, but still integrate the important parts into the script.
Love that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, love that.
It was one of those things where it was like, watching it, you still get such a great story, and you get the same feelings. Like, the credits rolled, and I literally just said, ugh, what a good movie.
Oh, that's such an amazing feeling.
See? I literally was just like,
that's how you know you did something right. Like, as a filmmaker, when you make the thing and you put it out in the world and that's how it's received, you know you did it right. That's such a beautiful feeling.
And I loved that not only was Suzanne Collins an executive producer, but she also had other credits in the film, which means she really had a hands-on kind of role.
Love that.
Which means she made sure her story was still being told the correct way. And
personally,
that woman...
Yeah, go ahead. No, personally, as like a production person, I so dislike how much a writer of a book is dismissed during the filmmaking process. Like, I definitely understand this may not be your lane or your industry or your specific, like, area of expertise. I understand that. Right. But no one is going to know those characters and the intent and stuff like the writer. And when they're kind of just like, oh, we took your film rights. All right, bye. I can't stand that. So I love when the writer has like a hand in, is one of the producers on the project, because it's just like one of those things, like they're not going to be a part of something with their baby and it not be good. So you know you're like in for something juicy. Well, I mean, on purpose.
We're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing that play out right now with George R.R. Martin and the whole Game of Thrones sort of world, if you will, because he didn't finish writing the books for the main Game of Thrones series before the show ended, right? Right. And so there's a lot of talk about how bad the ending of the series was and all these things. And, like, he had some notes on it, but at that point, we were, like, 7-8 seasons in. I don't think anyone was really going to him as an advisor.
They were just like, it's our show. Yeah.
Kind of. I don't know if that was the conversation. I won't put that on anybody, but that's the vibe I'm getting, if you will. And now we have a prequel out called House of the Dragon, and literally almost every episode, he's got something to say about it. And I was like, you signed your book rights away with no way of you being able to control what's being put out there. Like, you have to fight for your rights in this situation, not to quote Beastie Boys in any way, but...
As the original creator, that makes me so sad because, like, and it's one of those things where... I love what I do in the industry, but this is where it's like sometimes it also breaks my heart because sometimes it's like, you know, they went forward with it because it was so popular and it's such a business decision, and it's like you're kind of negating the purpose of why you made it, and it was like for the fans, for the creation, because of that. So
I think it comes down to what is creative interpretation and what is like canon for the story, because I'm going to get into some nerdy stuff for you. I know this is outside of your realm, Jay, so just hold on with me. But in House of the Dragon, there's a little question mark about who the father is of the queen, like the potential queen's children, right?
okay.
I'm paraphrasing everything for you. In the books, it's written in a way where it's like a question mark, but there's no way to prove that it's wrong. Whereas in the show, it's like blatant, listen, it might be a question mark, but we know who that daddy is, and that's not the daddy it should be kind of situation. And it's like, by making that simple change, you've now changed the entire trajectory of the series in that storyline. And it's those kind of changes where I'm like, you could have protected that if you were more hands-on and said, listen, this is going to come to bite you in the ass in future episodes. You know what I mean?
No, that makes sense. I mean, literally, this is what the whole point of the question was, is like, not just, oh, this has been turned into, from a book into a movie. It literally was like, who did it justice? Who did a good job? So, yeah, I think there are so many written works that deserve a shot and a place on the big screen, or what is it called? TV? Is it second screen?
The little screen.
Now? Little screen.
No,
Big screen and little screen.
Yeah.
And I definitely applaud the work of people like a Reese Witherspoon that's doing a lot of those projects, and I think like a Carrie Washington as well, that are doing them, and from the fandom responses that they're doing it well. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like, you really hope that it gets done justice. And sometimes it's almost like, if you're gonna mess it up, just leave it alone. Us book readers will reread it again. Like, just leave it alone.
Or just say inspired by. Don't say it's an adaptation.
Oh my god, that's a whole other rant that I will not make us go through, because
different podcasts, Jay. But also, good business idea for the two of us. Let me write that down. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sure it'll come up in our meeting.
But while we're talking about adaptations and taking people's work and things like this, it did get me thinking about, have you ever read a book and an author sets it in a specific setting, but you can tell that author has no idea about that city, that setting, that lifestyle, the verbiage, all that? Have you ever read a book like that? Because I've read plenty where I just said, you've never actually been to this city before. You have no idea.
I think it's my favorite being like from New York, because I feel like everything is set in New York. And there's something that says
it's my favorite.
And I'm just like, why is it even set here? Because like New York isn't even in this. And the reason, and the I phrase it like New York isn't even in this because it's just like, New Yorkers know, and if you aren't a New Yorker but you've been to the city, you know New York has its own energy. New York has its own sweat. New York City, no disrespect to New York State, but New York City is what I'm talking about right now. New York City.
5 boroughs, 5 different vibes.
Word.
It's
like,
real.
New York City has its own vibe and energy and just like magnetism to it. If I could say this and not sound crazy, New York City has Riz, like in and of itself. All right.
That's so true though. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to make this disclaimer right here as somebody who spent plenty of time in New York City. If MTA does not go there, it's not New York City.
That is such a valid distinction. Like, you got no idea.
I'm not including the LIRR because I've seen those fucking time slots and that is not real. I'm telling you right now. All right. Anything past where the 1 train stops, upstate. All right. Don't ask me questions about this.
I'm so proud of you, Chelsie. You have no idea. I'm like gushing because I know you're not a native New Yorker, but you did spend some time in my city. And I'm so proud right now.
Listen, as someone who has had to commute from Staten Island into the city for internships, and I've had to go all the way out to Queens, Jamaica, Queens, shout outs to St. John's. This is the one plug you're getting. but
yeah, okay.
It's the one plug they're getting.
Yeah, I miss the people. I don't remember, but yeah, okay.
I met you through them, so that's the only reason they're getting the plug.
This is true.
But it's so funny to me because people will like set a book in New York City and the only thing they talk about is, oh, the traffic was bad or the lights of the city. And I'm like, this is what you're giving me out of all of New York City?
Or
all
if they kind of go to like the tourist spots and then complain that there's so many tourists. I'm like, well, why would you go there? Like, as a native, I avoid Times Square like the plague. But Times Square is also a central point. So there is sometimes when I go through there, and anytime I'm coming to town with someone who hasn't been, I'm like, we'll go to Times Square. So it's one of those things where it's like Times Square is like a necessary evil of New York City. Like
it's a transfer spot to me.
Exactly, and that's my thing. It's like I'm in Times Square all the time underground. I'm just not walking around on top. So for me, Times Square is very important for like train routes. So yeah, when they kind of just talk and like complain about like all the tourists and stuff like that, I'm like, listen, as a New Yorker, I have no beef with tourists. I love tourists. They bring a lot of money to the city. They walk too slow, but I get it. You're not accustomed to it. New Yorkers, we got a pace to us. But at the same time, it's like that wonder in their eye and their ability and willingness to pay for absorbently priced things. Where I'm like, this is the heartbeat of the city. Like, enjoy it, and it's just a different energy.
But I will say, as someone who has made this complaint a lot, sometimes authors will set something in a city, and I'm gonna say something that's about to throw you for a loop. The Windy City series, Mile High, all of those books, Jay.
I needed a warning for
set
this.
In Chicago.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, it's set in Chicago. But that could have been set literally anywhere because we never Chicago is not a character in the book.
No, so I agree. And having been to Chicago, I think it honestly is a little disrespectful to the city. For me, I actually completely agree with you. I haven't read the entire series yet, but I felt like in one of the books, we got more of a description of, I think, like Miami than we did Chicago because they were like visiting, and I was just like, wow, okay. So I actually really agree. It's set in a big like metropolitan city, and it's not really like expressed, expanded upon, like loved on. Like I feel like if you're gonna pick a big city like that, you gotta show that city love. You know what I mean? Because like
I'll put it this way for people. It's like when you're reading a small town romance and they talk about how this is the only bar in town or like one-way streets and like everybody knows each other. Like you don't get that vibe if an author puts it in a mainstream city. Right. And I find that very interesting because it's like, are you just picking this big city because in your mind this is what you imagine would happen in that city? Or like, have you been there? Like Liz Tomford is a flight attendant. So she has traveled to cities. She knows cities. So I'm not going to say that she doesn't know Chicago. It was just really interesting to me, someone who's never been to Chicago, reading about something set in Chicago, and I walked away knowing nothing about Chicago.
That is so interesting because I have been to Chicago. I haven't been long. I want to come back. So someone show me a good time.
I would love
Chicago.
To go. Someone teach me about deep dish. Show me the bean. White Sox.
As a New Yorker,
y'all need to get it together.
I know people are probably gonna be mad about me, but I was not happy after trying deep dish pizza. But anyway, I just feel like when I got to Chicago, so I because it's another big city. When I got to Chicago, I actually took the train from the airport, which even having like a train going to the airport, that's how you kind of know the vibe of the city, right? Took the train from the airport. I walked to my hotel. I walked to my hotel, and it was one of those things where it was just like, I could like feel the city vibes in my veins, and I was like in it, and I was like, yes. And then you're right, I never really like put two and two together, but when you read that series, I don't feel the pulse of Chicago in the book. Like even the high rise elements of it feels a little disconnected. And for me, I just always like equated that to like, oh, they're high priced athletes, so that's probably why. But even in New York, even where like some of like the upper echelon like live, like there's still an energy and like there's no like, oh, you can't sit here vibe. Like you can still walk around and like you rub elbows with everybody in New York. I think that's one of the beautiful things. Like the subway is the great equalizer because we all commute that way for the most part. So Yeah, no, I get you. I think there's some times where it's just like I want to feel and love the city. Like even in this book is set in one of my favorite cities in the States, and I feel like we didn't even get the biggest taste that we should have gotten from it. So, yeah.
Well, let's deep dive a little bit more into frequently used cities, if you will. Because I feel like I have read lots of books, as y'all can tell. And I feel like if it's not set on an alien planet, it's probably going to be in 5 cities or in Canada. All right. It's rare that we get out of like, all right, let me break it down this way. LA, San Francisco, Bay Area, New York City, New Orleans if it's witchy, and like small town USA. We'll just lump them all together.
Yeah,
and then you've got Canada, and then some alien planet if you're reading alien smut. And
what
I feel
are you
like
reading
there's so
set
many
in Canada? Because like,
you've read stuff. Flawless is set in Canada.
And so is Ties That Tether, but like that's so random. I feel like I rarely read stuff set in Canada.
Oh, I read lots of stuff set in Canada, especially if it's like a hockey romance or like small town USA. It's a Canadian writer, but like I'm not dissing these cities, but I do wish that we could put some other cities on the map. If you will.
I agree. As you know, I love to travel. And back in my tennis days, I used to travel a lot, like via road trips. And now as an adult, just because of time, I take more like flights. And one of my favorite things is getting into a place I've never been and just like exploring it. Like I said, even with Chicago, like as soon as I landed, I hopped on the train and like I could have like taken a taxi, whatever, but I was just like, I mean, as a New Yorker, I was like, I'm hopping on the train. I trust their train system. And it was an experience. Their trains are very different than New York trains, but even then it was an experience. So yeah, I really love being able to experience other cities. Yeah. Like something I noticed, and I didn't really do this on purpose, but as I started to travel more and more, I realized that like when I was in certain cities, I seeked out pieces from books that I've read or movies or TV shows. And I was like, that's so beautiful that I want to connect to the art in a more tangible way. So I really loved when authors like give the city like their flowers, you know, because it's sit there.
Well, it's just funny because I feel like depending on the city, you already know what type of story you're getting. If it's LA or New York, you're getting a billionaire romance. All right, I don't even need to know the back of the book. No. Or if it's set in New Orleans, we're getting a witchy sort of like supernatural vibe. Just like today's book, if you want to get into it.
I think chef stuff is also set in New Orleans, too, because it's such a food city.
Yes.
I love New Orleans.
Yes. But tell me I'm wrong, because today's book is definitely a witchy vibe, set in New Orleans. Definitely gave me Originals, which is a spinoff of Vampire Diaries vibe. Okay. And I just feel like, don't hate me on this. We could have set this in a different supernatural city.
I would have preferred if they did, actually.
That's because you love New Orleans, and I don't think you liked this book. Should we get into it?
Let's get into the book. I'm not going to touch that one yet.
Okay. So, Jay, today's book was...
I don't know. You tell me.
Today's book was Wolf Gone Wild by Juliet Cross. And I had to look just to make sure I pronounced her name right, but I do have the book right here.
It's such a cute little, like, cover. Yeah.
But she thick. She thick with, like, 2 C's, maybe.
It was a thickums. It was a thickums. My gosh. Okay.
I feel like it was a thickums to you because you were just not vibing with it. I think you really needed a palate cleanser and another palate cleanser.
So if I'm gonna be real honest, I palate cleansed in the middle of reading it too. I was like, I'm gonna switch gears. That's kind of why it took me so long to read it. Well, it wasn't like, oh, it took me so long to read it because of that. It was just like, I was like, I need to just turn my brain off. Okay. I felt, and I didn't feel this way throughout, but it probably like around the 30-ish% mark, I kind of felt like I was in magic school. Like, I felt like I was, like, in a class to learn witchiness and werewolfness. Like, okay, to be fair, I think I needed all that information because I don't know a lot about the world. So I appreciated the insight. I really did. Because if I'm going to be honest, oh my God, y'all gonna come after me for this one. I know it. Okay, so experience.
Just say it.
My experience and knowledge of anything werewolf and or vampire is like exclusively from Twilight. I'm trying to think. Oh, so my cousin was obsessed with the Vampire Diaries, so I watched a couple of the shows with him. Yeah. Come on! Come on!
Jay, we're not doing this right now. You're not about to sit here and tell me that your only knowledge of werewolves and vampires is Twilight Diaries. We're not doing this right now. I can't.
I'm really trying to think if there's anything else. Like, I read Twilight and I read New Moon, and then I stopped reading and I just watched all the movies. Vampire
You're telling
Diaries.
me you've never read a vampire book or a werewolf book, a witchy book?
I watched Practical Magic. My mom was a huge Charmed fan, so I did watch like a large part of that show. I haven't seen every single episode, but I've seen a large chunk of it.
A lot of them would terrify you anyways.
I was like somehow braver when I was younger. I'm not sure how, but I was definitely braver when I was younger. I think like life has scared me as an adult.
Yep.
No, that's superhero, not vampire.
All right, Jay, for the sake of our friendship, let's just move past this.
Okay. My point of saying that was I feel like I did need the information because I didn't have a lot to pull from. With that being said, it was a lot of information. I really felt like I was in magic school. I was like, I feel like I need a degree after this.
Here's your diploma on understanding how witches work.
Thank you.
I could get, as someone who's never like really delved into this world, why it would feel like a lot of information. Mm-hmm. I will say that they definitely created their own kind of witchy werewolf vibes in this book, which no shade to them because I truly enjoyed it. Alpha is one of my number one characters. I think Alpha is the voice that I hear in my head, which is why I go to therapy. Listen, when he said a dull spoon to take out the enemy, I said
that
yes.
That was hilarious because it was like a distinction too. Yeah.
He said I went to scoop his innards out with a spoon, a dull spoon, and I said yes.
Yeah. No, Alpha definitely grew on me, especially like the more it went on.
Yeah. I would say I loved all the witchy vampire vibes. There were a couple of things that made me frustrated. Like, a lot of books you'll read about werewolves will talk about their mate, which is their, like, one true love, OTP.
Okay.
And for some reason in this book, we couldn't use that word. And I was ready to fight.
OTP?
One true pairing.
Got it. Okay. I'm on board now. Because I was like, wait, love starts with an L? And I was like, and for a second I was like, did my dyslexia split them? No, that's the wrong letter.
Jay, werewolves, witches, and all of these supernatural things is like my sweet pocket. That is my my safe place.
Yes.
So yeah, tell me if I'm using words that you won't understand.
Oh, I will, because I will probably continue to be confused.
But it was very weird that Mateo wouldn't use the word mate when it came to Evie. And I literally just kept going, just say the word. Just say it.
Really?
Like,
interesting.
I got mad because it was one of those things where it was like, you know, Mateo is cursed. His wolf won't shut up. But the minute he gets around Evie, everything quiets. Mm-hmm. You know, everything is right with the world. He wants to protect her. That's his girl. No one can have her. And I literally was like, I don't know why Alpha isn't saying it either. Because that is his base instinct. So why isn't Alpha just telling him that's our mate? And like putting his 4 paws down on it. You know what I mean? I wasn't asking Mateo to stand 10 toes down. I was asking Alpha to stand 4 paws down. You know what I mean? It made me frustrated as someone who, like, really loves this world and who really, like, if there's one way to get me to read a book, tell me there's an alpha werewolf in it and I will gobble it up like Thanksgiving dinner, okay?
Okay, so now I have a question. First of all, the Thanksgiving dinner, I actually took a picture of the menu because I was like, that sounds delicious. But
it sounded too fancy for me.
Oh, no, I wanted to pull up a chair. I wanted some. Okay, so question for you. Alpha. I assume that was his wolf's name, but was his name Alpha because he's an alpha wolf? Or did he just like the name Alpha and he's like, I'm Alpha?
I think that's more of a question for Juliet.
Miss, you're supposed to, like, tell me these things.
All right. Here's the thing. It's very clear that Mateo is an alpha male. All right. That's very clear, especially when he's talking about growing up in the house with his dad.
Yes.
And how, as he started to feel his wolf, you know, it was clear that, you know, they were two headstrong males that weren't going to be able to live in the same house. I think in terms of this story, for show that's his wolf's name, Alpha. In terms of, like, understanding the full werewolf world that Juliet has created, I would have to read more books for me to understand how her pack system works, because it was very weird that she said that wolves are loners, because if we're just talking on, like, a basic animal level, wolves travel in packs.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually picked up on that, and I was like, maybe werewolves are different from wolves, and I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, but I thought alphas needed to lead a pack, and I was like, maybe he just hasn't found his pack?
No, it was very weird, because I was like, how you alpha of one? Who you leading?
But then there were other wolf packs or clans that were mentioned. You had, like, I think it was the Lucian clan or the Lycan clan or something. And then
they were
the biker clan that his cousin was in. And actually,
I thought that was the same thing.
No, it was two different clans. And then in my mind, I don't know, I could be wrong. But I will say this, I actually, in my, like, magic learning, like, curriculum, I did appreciate the history of, like, it was a Spaniard that was cursed, and then, like, his descendants fled to France. Because for me, I was like, okay, now you finally connected the New Orleans element. Because New Orleans is one of my favorite cities, and one of the trips when I was there, I learned a lot of the history of the city, and it has a lot of French and Spanish influence, because when they came through the ports and settled there, that's why the naming of the city, the streets and everything like that. So for me, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
It's part of the Louisiana Purchase, like the French owned
but even with that,
New Orleans,
because when I went, I was surprised I saw so much Spanish culture. And because I was like, oh, New Orleans, French. No, there's actually a lot of Spanish ties and culture and people there as well. And for me, I thought it was only French. So I was very pleased to learn about whatever. So learning that the original werewolf or the original cursed man that was made a werewolf was Spanish. And then his descendants went to France. So, like, literally thinking about it, so culturally, werewolves are like Spanish, Frenchmen, and then go other else and get other nationalities, I guess.
I will say this. I loved that tie-in, but we made Mateo Spanish, and there's no need other than the fact that he was a wolf to make him Spanish. I went on a rant. I went on a rant already in a previous episode about making a character a nationality for no reason. And we made Mateo Spanish. And besides him being a werewolf, I can't see any reason why we needed to make him Spanish other than his award-winning meat pies and empanadas.
That's what a meat pie is the whole time.
I'm not saying they're the same thing in my mind.
Okay, the whole time I was like, is it a chicken pot pie not with chicken? I was very confused as to what a meat pie was, and I was not curious enough to look it up. Okay, I actually disagree
Right.
with you.
But
I actually appreciated that he didn't have any like stereotypical Spanish or Hispanic kind of like vibes to him. But I immediately, when I found out about the history of werewolves, I was like, oh, that's why he's Mateo Cruz. Like, from the very like first chapter, knowing his name is Mateo, I was like, okay, it's likely he's probably Spanish. Of course, there's other like Italians have Mateos, like there's other people that have Mateos, but I was like, okay, he's something. And then when we got to Cruz, I was like, oh, okay, Spanish. But then when we learned about the history of the werewolves and knowing that like the first one was Spanish, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So I understand we didn't get a lot of like Spanish or Hispanic culture in it, but I didn't feel like we necessarily needed it because it was explained through the history, the werewolf history.
Let me say this. I think if she had blatantly said he's a direct descendant of the original wolf, could have let it go. I think if we, I mean, like, here's the thing, right? While the original wolf was of Spanish descent, at this point, centuries later, we all know that that has spread out and not everybody's of Spanish descent. We also didn't go into how you create a werewolf other than by birth, so that's a whole nother thing. And I think that's part of this argument for me is like, I feel like I'm about to lose you here, Jay.
I'm following. I'm still following.
I think in my mind, because there's so many different ways to become a werewolf, like, he didn't have to be Spanish. But because we didn't establish some of those rules in this book, I think that's where my brain just goes, he didn't have to be Spanish. Because for me, every time that Mateo nipped at Evie's like neck when they were being all cute and cuddly, I was like, doesn't a werewolf bite create a werewolf? So then, like, will she become a hybrid? Like, these are the questions I was asking. And I literally just went, where does this leave us? And maybe if some of those questions have been answered.
I was also very
a werewolf bite turned you into a werewolf.
Every time he was anywhere near her neck. But it was because I was just scared he was going to bite for biting's sake. I didn't realize it had a significance.
That jugular. That jugular.
I thought vampire bites were significant. I didn't realize werewolf bites were also significant. I just thought they were like
werewolf bites
puppy taking a nibble.
No, so like that's the thing is a lot of werewolf culture. Not every story is the same, but a lot of werewolf culture is that like you become a werewolf off of a werewolf bite during the full moon, or like some sort of situation like that. Now, so then I was literally sitting here going,
he had a human mom, and I thought it was very interesting because he also dated humans, and Alpha definitely had a moment of being like wanting to breed, and so I was wondering if it was like to keep like the human, I guess, like look, and I was like, I wonder if that was like a requirement in any way, because when she like him and Evie started to get together, I was like, I would like. The rule for no werewolves was more so for like her and the family for like safety elements. Yeah. And obviously because as we saw that there could be a danger with having like a werewolf, especially if it was like angry or loose or whatever. But I really wondered throughout reading it, because it was never really touched or established if there were any like werewolf rules about not being with witches, because from the description it seems like the witches have human forms. Yeah. But his dad and him were with human women, and I just thought that was interesting.
I'm not sure there was a question in there.
My thing was like the distinction was like I wondered if werewolves had rules about like you have to be with a human woman or no witches, because the witches had a no werewolf stuff.
One of the issues I have with this book is just that they left a lot of things open-ended and didn't really explain them. Like, okay, Evie's his mate, but what does that mean for any children that they have? You know what I mean? Are they a hybrid? Is there a real reason behind no witches and werewolves as a rule besides just the aggressiveness of the inner wolf? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, is there a reason behind this? Because wolves weren't even welcomed at, like, the witch, like, convention, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I definitely, like, those are the kind of questions I would have wanted answered, even just a little bit, if they were hinted at. A side note, I think would have made it better for me. It was like she started a world, but didn't build it fully out.
I hear you. They're definitely, like, I finished a book and I definitely had a couple more questions. I guess they just weren't that relevant because, like we said, it was a thick book, and I was just like, you know what? I'm fine with those being unanswered. Meant nothing else. But also, knowing it's a series, I kind of feel like those might be answered later. Because I feel like we got a lot of introductions and a lot of hints that are going to be future books.
Yeah. Well, like, it was like, excuse me, how do I put this? It was like, oh, God, the words won't come to me. All right, so we spent the book is thick, right? Mm-hmm. But we spend a lot of time just talking about what books will tell you what spells and like building up Evie and Mateo's relationship, but we don't spend a lot of time building the world.
Yeah.
So it was like thick for no reason. Like, I don't need to know all these books that are not helpful. I just need to know the one book that is helpful so we could save those pages for explaining to me how this is going to work with the witch and a werewolf, especially because he's also 50% human.
Yeah. I will say this, and I feel bad saying it, especially because I am a fan of a thickums of a book. Like, I love, like, deep dive, give me all the things. Like, 51% of the book, I was like, this is dragging. Like, I just want all the answers. And I felt bad, but literally it was after the first, like, summon situation. And it was kind of like, okay, that didn't work. Can we just find the answer? Because you guys took forever to try that. Like, forever. And it didn't work. So, find a solution.
Yeah.
And then also, okay. All right. So, Evie and Mateo romantically. They irritated me a little bit. Here's why. They spend all of this time together. Beautiful, great, whatever. Two artists, one secret, one like well-renowned, whatever. Yeah. Anyway. So they kind of get to the point where they both were kind of on board to like, we're going to try this thing romantically. Evie's entire family is just like, yeah, we love Mateo. We want our little like pet werewolf like brother-in-law. Like they never. Ew. What?
The way you called him a pet werewolf brother-in-law just skeeved me out.
Oh, is that weird? I just said that because they like the animals, because they have like the rooster and the cat. But okay.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry,
anyway.
I do not know werewolf culture, so my bad. So I just like they went like Clara. I understood like when Clara was on board. I understood because of her abilities and her ability to like tap in. I understood that. But Jules coming around and the mom coming around and like everyone just full on just being like, oh yeah, that's your man. Oh yeah, that's your werewolf. Where's your boo? I was just like, ain't nobody asking questions. Like it was very sudden. And then I think once Evie got the okay from the family, which happened very quickly, she was like, oh, well, if I don't have to pretend I'm not basically already in love with him, well then yeah, that's my dude. And then what's his name? Mateo was basically like, well, great. If her family is fine, then I'm taking her out tomorrow. And it was like, okay, guys. And then they're starting their journey. And because they're both like attracted to each other, they're starting to get hot. And he specifically goes like, hey, I don't trust my wolf. I don't think we can do anything. And then they proceed to do stuff before they figure out the wolf thing. So I'm like, okay, so we just aren't scared anymore, which is like, okay, I get it. But like, I thought the whole point was like, I'm very scared. I won't be able to control my wolf and all these other things. Yeah. And then you guys are just like, all the red lights are green now. And then this is the other thing that really irritated me. Really, really irritated me. I guess they had the plan, but the author didn't share it with us as a reader until we were on our way to like the woods. The entire, like, so the day before or something like that, that's when Evie and Mateo were like, oh, after we fix this hex, we can finally be together. And it was kind of very much the energy of like, oh my God, tomorrow's going to be amazing. And I was like, the whole time reading that, I was like, he's still going to have a wolf problem if you fix the hex. He has to go like hunt. Again, all I know is.
I swear that was explained.
Hold on. All I know is Twilight culture, and so I know that they eat it sounds like he has a vegetarian diet where he eats animals, but not.
Did you say humans. A vegetarian diet?
Isn't that what it is for werewolves when they don't eat humans?
A vegetarian diet is gonna be the same no matter what world you're in. That means they're eating vegetables.
No. Okay. Either way. So when they end up doing the spell, so the whole time I was worried that they were going to do it like in their backyard. And I was like, he's going to go full on wolf in the middle of the city. And then so when they were driving out to the woods, I was like, oh great, this is smart. But then literally the whole time it's like, yeah, you're going to have to stay in the woods for a while and do your wolf thing. So I was like, why were y'all making plans for like tomorrow night if you knew he was going to have to go hunt and do all this stuff anyway? Like they were giving such like high school stupid lovers to me. I was so irritated with them.
Alright, so here's the deal. I think part of the problem with the fast acceptance of Mateo was Juliet had future books planned, I think, in her mind. And so she was like, yeah, I just gotta like lay the groundwork here. But it was like, no, part of that groundwork is the fight for them to be together.
Yeah.
I will say that the whole conversation about them being together after he fixed his wolf situation, in my mind, that was not immediate. I did not get that as like we're going to go do the spell in the woods and then come right home and just,
got it. Okay.
Get it going.
Got it. That
but I will also necessary. I don't know. I panicked on what to say. But I will say this. When the first spell failed, I was convinced that was Alpha when they were in the bed together having their little moment, their little steamy moment. There was nothing in my blood that would have believed it was Mateo until his chapter followed, and I was like, okay, it's safe. It is Mateo. Because I was convinced that the spell went wrong. Alpha was now in control because it was like, he was like, I don't want to do anything until after we get the hex figured out. But then he still did something with no real conversation. And I said, is this Alpha? I was like, look into his eyes. Look into his eyes.
Word.
Tell me what color they are.
I did love that wolf distinction, like the color of the eyes, being able to tell who was like talking and stuff. Can I get into my issue with this book? Yes, please.
We essentially have a mystery of who did the hex and why. I'm going to tell you right now, I read this whole book and I paid attention to the whole book, and I still don't understand why he was chosen for the hex, but also there were no good clues to figure out who did it. There was Mateo's assistant, Missy, was a good sort of like distraction, but it wasn't until Sandra came in for like that second meeting at the coffee shop that I was like, oh, it's her. It was at that point when she was like, oh, I have to go get my... Well, because I was like, I guess it could be Missy because like she's had a crush on him since he hired her. Like maybe she tried to trap his wolf so that they could be together without the wolf issue. You know what I mean? Or like maybe she like went to a witch.
Before you finish, I'm gonna jump in really quickly. I was kind of convinced it was Missy the whole time. Here's the thing, like nothing about Missy made me think that she was like nefarious in any way. What I thought was that Missy was kind of in love with him. And she had like a powerful aunt or something that was like, oh, we gonna get you this wolf. That's what I thought. Like not Missy herself, but like Missy having a connection to a powerful person.
Yes.
It makes me feel so good.
Missy's not the witch.
Yeah, it makes me feel so good hearing that you didn't suspect Sandra until the second coffee like situation. Because usually you know who the people are like from jump. And I'm always like, I don't know until they told me. But this time, I started to suspect Sandra, not specifically at the second coffee shop. I suspected her when they described the Medusa statue. That's when I started to suspect her. But, I was like, and that's the thing, from like, they tried the first hex break, around like 51%-ish of the book, I think. And from there, the entire time, I was just like, who's the witch? Can we get to it? And so I was like, is it secretly a vampire that used the witch? Like,
Yo,
I was just like, can we just figure this out?
The way she kept texting me being like, why won't you just tell me?
Please. I was so, like, over it.
Because here's the thing. There's no real clues to keep you going. There's no oh, here's a bait and switch. There's nothing. It was just kind of like, here's the world. You try and figure it out. And I was like, that's not how this works. Like, I love me a good mystery, but the clues have to be there for me to figure out the mystery. And it was like, there were a lot of clues trying to like point you towards Missy, which should have been my first clue that it wasn't her. I don't know why I didn't realize that. But then it was like, I started thinking it wasn't Missy just because it was like, we never got any real interaction with Missy and Mateo. Like, yeah, there was like that one moment, but like, that was it, where it was just kind of like, oh yeah, she's had a crush on me, so I make her call me Mr. Cruz or whatever. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. And then there's the second interaction with Sandra at the coffee shop, which this pissed me off because Sandra's only in the book 3 times. We meet her at the coffee shop, we meet her again at the coffee shop, and then we meet her when we find out that she's the one who did all of this, right? And I remember on that second coffee shop when she was like, oh, how's the statue going? Oh, I'm so excited. Like, I have to run errands, but like, just bring it by the house later. I was like, I mean, it could be her. It could be her. Like, I literally like had that thought as I was reading it. I was like, maybe like, but here's the thing. I was like, maybe she's trying to harness his power to bring back her true love that like is where she got all of her money from, and that's why she's rich, yada, yada, yada.
So I started to suspect her. I didn't really find her suspicious until the Medusa statue in her backyard. But what kind of made me go, maybe Sandra? Like, I wasn't suspecting her, but I was like, she's kind of an option now, was when she specifically said, oh, this feels like deja vu in the coffee shop. I just felt like that was such a weird thing to say, because it was literally nothing at all like the last time that they ran into each other. You know what I mean? Like, it was a very different encounter.
Yeah.
So it was just like, it was the same coffee shop, yes, but like last time, what's her face was sitting down. They were like ordering together. Like, it was a very different encounter.
You
so
took
I was just
a
like, this
literal
isn't deja vu at all. Oh, that's how I.
It was a literal deja vu for you, and I was like, bypass. I was like, I'm already suspecting you.
Yeah,
I don't care.
So then, I hate to say this, but this is why I'm saying, like, it dragged. Like, for a Thickums book, the things that I wanted to get more details about, I didn't. Yeah. And the things that I was like, can we just, it was like there. And I was just like.
No, it 100% did drag. And like, I'll agree with you on that one. That's not a fight for me here. Because for it to be so thick, I was like, we didn't really lean into the mystery of what's going on. There were a lot of nightmares that we could have leaned into. And then we get this like awkward reveal of it being Sandra. From my reading comprehension, she just literally picked him because she wanted to live forever. And he had a good, strong, like, magical harness, if you will. Like, he just, his magic was strong enough for her to do it. But there's a part in that final chapter that I still don't understand, if I'm going to be honest.
Ooh.
So, we get to the point where Evie is like, that's my man's, I'm going to stick beside him, you know. And she manages to break whatever Sandra's been up to, and Alpha, like, pulls her into his lap. And I literally just went, how are they sitting? What is going on?
Oh,
the descriptions confused me. I literally was like, he's a wolf. He's like literally the embodiment of a wolf, just extra big. And I just went, okay, cool. What's a lap for a wolf? How are they laying his paws on her?
For me, I was looking at like, isn't his leg still broken? Like, and then they started talking about that, and I was like, so this whole time he was on his broken leg?
When I tell you I was so confused, I literally just went, what is going on? Because she says, oh, he took his paw and like pulls her into his lap. And I literally was like, in my head, his leg is broken, so he's on his side. So how did we, and then what makes a lap? And I was lost.
I will forever be like, what's a lap for a wolf? didn't even think about that in my mind. So because there's a couple of times where I was a little confused by the sideways configuration of the way she describes him sitting. Like even when they were doing like, oh my god, the Star Wars date was like the cutest thing.
So cute.
But even in that, when she was mad and she was like clutching her knees and he like, I was like I was a little confused. So this time again,
he was like, he pulled her in.
I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna imagine that he's like cradling her, but like to him. That was just how I was like I was like, I can't. I'm not trying to. I was so over it at this point. I was like, okay, she's the witch. Like, what's next?
The Star Wars date, I had no idea how she was sitting versus him. I gave up on that. The wolf lap, I gave up on that too. At the end of the day, we figured out that Sandra was it. And then I just kind of went, all right, cool. We did it, y'all. We did it, Joe. What happens now? Because there's only one smut scene in this entire book, so I'm just kind of like, like one true smut scene. Other ones were like cute flirty moments, but like,
girl, we gonna talk later. If those are just cute flirty moments, Chelsie.
Okay, there's the one after the failed hex breaking attempt that I was like, oh Sam. And then there's the one where she's like, I'm yours. It was Alpha who took over after the witch convention.
Yeah, that's the one that you were talking about.
Those are the two. I'll give you those two.
Okay. You don't think the workbench counts as its own thing?
Oh snap! I forgot about that.
Okay, I mean it was like right after, but it's not a
in
true
my
continuation.
Head, yeah, but I think for me it was just kind of like we do this whole thing about how wolves aren't welcomed in the coven, and then all of a sudden they are welcome. We've got the sister also potentially in love with Mateo's cousin. Yeah. We've got a vampire in love with the head sister. And I was like, we've started a lot of stories, but we haven't really finished one properly. Yeah. We finished the book with like taking down Sandra. And I was like, cool, I'm not reading the rest of the series.
Ooh. So funny you say that. Because you know how you finish a book, and so I read this digitally, and so you know how like you finish a book, and then they have like, here's what's next, like here's a sneak peek. I literally said, nope.
All right, I'll tell you what I did.
So here's the thing. I would actually really like to know what's up between Ruben and Jules. But
I can tell you.
Okay, we'll come back to that. But if I were to actually read another story, it would be Violet and Nico. Because at first, I thought it was really unnecessary to... I said that weird. I thought it was unnecessary to put those two together in the middle of the book. But I thought it did serve a purpose in terms of helping Mateo realize his wolf. Because he realized that Nico was always trying to touch Violet and was like rubbing on her. And he was like laughing. He was like, ha ha ha, his wolf is like trying to claim her. Yeah. And then he was like, oh, that was a cute moment. I've been doing this since Jump. And so for me, like, I did not love how all the witches kind of started to couple up in the middle of the book with no, like, But for Nico and Violet, I did like the significance because it was like one of those mirroring moments so that Mateo can be like, oh. And so that I appreciated. But, like, Jules and Ruben, I think their little banter to ask for the book at his library and little coffee shop area, I was vibing with that. Everything else after that, I felt was too much of their story in this book because it's not about them.
Which is very interesting because we don't even get their book until the final book of the series.
And you've read it,
of course,
because you don't read in order.
No. Oh. No, I haven't. Stop trying to make me a monster, okay? So here's what happens. When you're reading on Kindle, after you finish the book, they're like, here's the rest of the books in the series. So then I was like, oh, I want to know, like, what's going on, who ends up with who. So I just read, like, the like, synopsis of each book. And I, of course, was like, I love Clara enough to know I want to make sure that she ends up with someone.
Who'd she end up with?
I think she ends up with a vampire. But don't. So it's
I
Nico
kind of
and
want her to get
Violet.
with Travis. Okay, Nico and Violet, obviously.
Who the hell is Travis?
The non-cousin, the one that was after Evie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like Nico and Violet, Jules and Ruben. Clara ends up with a Grimm.
Interesting.
And then,
is it the same Grimm from outside? You know what? I'm not. Don't answer that.
Not important.
Yeah.
And then it's really weird because Juliet made the decision to go from all of this that happens in book 1 to a sister that's not even featured in book 1 as
is
book
it like
2.
Isadora or something? One of the ones that was never
Yes,
there?
it's Isadora. And I literally just said, "How did we get here?"
I had to write down their
decision you
names
made?
because at first I was like, okay, Evie, and then I was like, okay, Jules, and then I was like, okay, Clara, and I was like, okay, Clara has a twin Violet, okay, and then she kept saying Isadora, and I was like, who is Isadora? And I said, you know what? She said there were 6 of them, so let me write this down. And so literally, and I think the last one might be Lizzie. I think I'm not sure, but it was one of those things I was just like. Girl, y'all trying to fight intergalactic werewolves. I mean, not intergalactic. You know what I mean. And I was like, why aren't the sisters all here? I know. Yeah. I know intergalactic is not the thing for this. I get it.
I know.
I'm sorry.
So, I'm going to break down this rating. This is going to be a different type of rating system than normal because I realized that when I originally rated this book was purely for Mateo and Evie. It wasn't the book overall.
Yeah.
So if you had to give Evie and Mateo's love story a rating out of 5, what would you give it?
Really high, because she's like an adorable nerd and he's just like lovesick for her. I thought they were really cute. Just them, ignoring everything else, including werewolf and witchness. I think they probably have like a solid 4.5.
Okay. Yeah. So I gave that a 4. Okay. I did. Now, if you were to rate the book overall, what would you give it?
A 3.
Same.
Yeah. I feel bad. But yeah.
Why?
Because I do love. Here's the thing. I think the epilogue with like Evie and her whole comic book situation and the story I was telling, like Mr. Wolf and everything like that. I think that so encapsulates Evie and Mateo. She is light. Like I want to be friends with Evie. She's like light, fluffy, comic book nerd. Like all things, like obsessed with Star Wars. I know I could like kick it with her on a movie day. Like we would have so much. Like I want to be friends with. I want to be nerd friends with her. Like in all seriousness. And I think Mateo is like just the perfect pairing for her because he allows her to be soft. He allows her to be sweet. He allows her to have all of the things that she's into without ever belittling them in any way, which obviously we know from her past relationship that was a problem. So I love him for her. And I also like that because of his werewolfness, he has just a little bit of edge and danger to her where she could be like, all right. But of course, her as a witch that could defend herself, she'd be like, I got you. So I like that they can kind of like match in the light and fluffy, but also like enjoy the aggression without any sort of like potential harm, you know? So them as a couple, werewolf and witch, I was here for. I was so here for it.
Right.
Like everything else in the book, I was just like, I went to magic school. We didn't break the hex. The wrong witch didn't even show herself as an option until like the end of the book. Yeah. The sisters flipped completely 180, like distinctively. I was rocking with the mom, but even the mom was like, where's your werewolf? Like even Alpha was like, hey mom! Like it was just such a flip where I was just like, for me, my rereading is a large part of my like consideration component. And literally for me, number 3 is like, the book was good, but I'm not going to reread it. And it's like, I'm also not going to read the series. It was just, I hate to say this. Oh God, this sounds so disrespectful. It was like so many wasted words. I feel like I consumed so many unnecessary words.
Like, this is the type of book I could understand why someone skipped words in the paragraphs because it was too long of a paragraph. Like, no tea, no
I
shade.
still don't co-sign that. I will not co-sign that.
No. I'm not co-signing it. What I'm saying is I could understand how we got there on this book.
Got it.
Because a lot of it, like, I would give it a 3, and I think a lot of that 3 is purely because of Alpha, and Alpha giving me Venom vibes, which
he did.
I don't know if you know who Venom is. Okay.
I do. He did.
Yeah, so he was giving me Venom vibes, and I was like, oh my god, I love Alpha, but, like, there was just so much that I just went, this isn't actually moving the plot anywhere. This feels like filler to get us to the actual plot points, and I just went, well, I enjoyed my reading experience. It's not something I love. It's not something I would reread. I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone else. You know what I mean? So, while I loved Mateo's Star Wars date, a 3 is as far as it's going to get, all right? And I mean, that is like a 2.9999999 repeating sort of 3.
You know, it's very interesting because... Yeah, I can't reread this. I just can't go through it again. And as cute as they are, they're not cute. Like I got cute on my stacks. I don't need their cute to revisit. But at the same time, one thing that did bug me purely relationship wise with them, she's a witch, he's a vampire. They both know that they are supernatural, and they both what?
You said she's a witch, he's a vampire.
She's a witch, he's a vampire. Him, he.
Who are we talking about?
Mateo!
Is a werewolf.
Oh, werewolf. Sorry, I mixed up my magics, people. Okay, that's my bad. Okay, hold on. All right. Let me start again. Okay. So, she's a witch. He's a werewolf.
Yes.
And it really bugged me because they both are very aware of their lineage and the powers that they have. I was very annoyed that he never really gave Evie an insight into the alpha, like conversation in his mind. And granted, a lot of it was inappropriate, so I understand why. But there were some cases where I was kind of like, I wanted him to open up to her because she won't ever like judge you for that. She understands that that's your wolf and it's not you as Mateo. And I think it also could have given a little bit, not necessarily insight, but I think like she would have been accepting, and I would have loved to have seen the moment of her accepting his wolf, not just like sexually and like just like in a regular conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's also like Alpha's not going anywhere. Alpha's going to be a part of a relationship.
Didn't realize that he was supposed to never be there. So like when he was talking and stuff throughout the whole book, I just assumed that the wolves do that, but it's just not as like aggressive. And so when they did fix the spell and everything, he specifically said, oh, Alpha never goes away, but he's a lot calmer now. It never even occurred to me that he's not supposed to be hearing Alpha at all. Like I just had thought the Alpha was just being extra aggressive.
So depending on what type of book you're reading, most times, I'm not going to say all the time, but a lot of times, your inner werewolf is there all the time. You guys are connected. But in this world that she's created, they're two halves sharing the same body. So Alpha would only show up when it was time for them to make the swap. Whereas as soon as the hex happened, Alpha was in his head all the time, which was what was driving him crazy and putting him on edges, because he was like, I can't find silence in all of this chaos.
Alpha wanted to fight everything. Yeah, okay.
Alpha was like, yo, you could run it. I don't like the way you looked at me. I don't like I don't like the way you blew your nose. Run it.
Honestly, I'm not even kidding. Like, Alpha grew on me. Like, it was one of those things that I think Mateo even like described it as like it's like having a devil on your shoulder, but the only problem was like he didn't have an angel to counteract. And I was like, yo, Alpha was like, there was one point specifically where Mateo was like, oh, you don't have something to say? And he's like, nah, I'm good. I like her. Like, I thought that was so cute.
Yo, those are my favorites where he was like, yo, just let me take over. I'll handle it. And he was like, no,
Even in the morning
Kevin
after,
Hart, just no.
Even in the morning after, and he was like, "She ain't happy because of your eggs." Yeah, Alpha was adorable. And again, and this is exactly where I make the point where I wish that Mateo would have shared a little bit more of Alpha with Evie, because it ended up being one of the keys to their safety. But it was also one of those things where, like, she loves Mateo and Alpha. Like, she fully accepted his wolf, but I feel like he never fully shared his wolf with her. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was almost like he didn't accept his wolf.
Yeah, well, like I said, because I didn't realize that he's not supposed to be there, I think he assumed, like, once this is all fixed, he's gone. So I understand maybe not sharing him if you never thought he was going to be a permanent fixture. I didn't realize that. Now that I know that, I understand why he didn't share it. But not knowing that, I wanted so many times for him to be like, Alpha says this. Like, because she would have understood and not judged him for it.
But I think the thing is like, whether he was supposed to be there or not, like, it was starting to become frequent where Alpha was just taking over. Mm-hmm. And it was like, if he had just talked her through what it's like having Alpha in charge, maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't have gotten what I consider a slow burn. All right? Maybe we would have gotten a little something shum. That's all I'm saying.
Because Evie, even without the distinction, was able to tell sometimes. And it was like, even I think about like one of the first movie nights, before they had like the official date, their first movie night, when he was at the house and when Clara came in and had to calm him down, like, Evie was noticing his wolf and was like, I swear I'm looking at him. And I just wanted, like, if Mateo had shared even a little bit, Evie would have understand that he was fighting for his life because Alpha was like, yo, you know what I mean? And just like, instead of sitting there like, I'm fine, like, just been like, my wolf is kind of screaming at me right now. I'm paying attention. I'm here with you, but just like, don't bend over again. like,
don't show me what you're working with back there. All right, like, we need to keep it G.
That's like relationship 101. So I feel like I don't regret reading it. I want to be clear. I don't regret reading it. And I have been enjoying this reading experience, especially for me, because I usually don't read things like this at all. I would have DNF'd it as soon as I realized it was set in New Orleans. Because I'm like, nope, you're not ruining my city. But I experienced it. I'm glad I experienced it. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, I'm not revisiting. And it kind of is just like reinstating why this is not my lane.
No. This book just isn't your lane. Trust me, there are other options out there.
I know you're going to keep trying.
But I am curious what the people at home think about this book. So if you've read this book, tell me what y'all rated it. Mm-hmm. Tell us what your thoughts are on it. We just need to know if we are the minority or the majority in this case. Yeah. Also, if y'all could do me a solid here. Our final book of our spooky season is definitely going to give Jay some serious issues. So if y'all could link below some nice palette cleansers, some funny videos just to get her through the night, because the trigger warning alone for our final book has definitely got her going. Mm-hmm. We gonna see.
Yeah.
We
respectfully
gonna see.
My DMs are open, respectfully, because if you're not respectful, you go to, is it like the request or whatever? So respectfully, my DMs are open if you want to send me nice things. I already know. Like, the trigger warnings in the book, sure, but I'm also standing by for Chelsie to send me my little book parental guidance.
Yeah, we gonna start those text messages tomorrow to give you enough time. But in the meantime, guys, thanks for watching another episode of our chaoticness. We really appreciate y'all being here. And, try not to listen to your inner alpha, all right? Like, that's definitely not the person you want to listen to out here in this world, okay?
At least don't act on it, because I feel like I need a little bit of alpha in my head, but I don't need alpha in my life.
In safe spaces, that's up to you what you do with that.
Exactly.
But we are out. We are going to go start our final book of the spooky season. Yes. Have a good one, y'all.
Bye. Peace.